Black Hawk Down isn't just another war movie. It's a harrowing look at one of the most intense urban battles in modern U.S. military history. Every frame hides a true story of courage, chaos, and survival. Fact 1. The movie is based on the real Battle of Mogadishu, which took place on October 3, 1993. U.S. Army Rangers and Delta Force operators were sent to capture warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid's top lieutenants. What was meant to be a quick 30-minute mission turned into an 18-hour firefight. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down by RPGs, trapping soldiers deep inside hostile territory. Streets filled with armed militia and angry civilians made every corner a death trap. Communications broke down, and chaos spread through the city. American troops fought house to house to reach their fallen comrades. The operation quickly spiraled out of control as reinforcements struggled to get through. By nightfall, the city was on fire, and soldiers were running low on ammo. Rescue convoys had to fight their way in under heavy gunfire. Some troops went nearly 24 hours without food or water. When the smoke cleared, 18 Americans were dead and 73 wounded. Somali casualties reached into the hundreds, possibly over 1,000. The mission's goal was never fully achieved, marking a sobering lesson in modern warfare. Fact 2. To bring authenticity, the filmmakers brought real Army Rangers and Delta Force veterans to the set. They trained the actors in tactics, movement, and communication exactly as they did in Somalia. Every weapon drill and combat scene was practiced for weeks before filming. The cast was pushed through an intense boot camp run by real military instructors. Actors like Josh Hartnett and Ewan McGregor slept in barracks and followed military schedules. They even learned how to speak through radio comms using real military codes. The goal was to make the dialogue and movements look completely natural. Many actors later said the training was harder than anything they'd done before. Ridley Scott wanted no Hollywood soldiers on screen, only realism. Some of the veterans became emotional during filming because of the memories it brought back. They corrected scenes to ensure everything was portrayed accurately. The training forged strong bonds among the cast, much like real soldiers in combat. By the time shooting began, they moved like a true combat unit. Their performances carried the weight of real war experience. Fact 3. The movie wasn't filmed in Somalia. It was shot entirely in Morocco. The production chose the city of Saleh to double as Mogadishu. Its architecture, dusty streets, and chaotic energy were a perfect match. The Moroccan military provided tanks, helicopters, and extras for battle scenes. Locals were hired to play Somali civilians, many of whom had never acted before. The heat was brutal, often reaching over 45 degrees Celsius on set. Cast and crew constantly battled dehydration and sandstorms. Ridley Scott used natural light to capture the raw, sun-bleached look of real combat. The production built detailed city blocks for the firefight sequences. Helicopters flew low over narrow streets to mimic the real mission's intensity. Every explosion and bullet strike was filmed practically, not digitally. Even the sounds of bullets and rotor blades were recorded live. The Moroccan government provided tight security during filming. Despite the challenges, the realism of the location made the movie's chaos feel frighteningly authentic. Fact 4. Many of the film's characters are based directly on real soldiers who fought that day. Staff Sergeant Matt Eversman, played by Josh Hartnett, was the leader of Chalk 4. Delta Sniper Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart, played by Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Johnny Strong, were both Medal of Honor recipients. They volunteered to defend the second downed helicopter, knowing it was almost a suicide mission. Both men fought until they were killed protecting pilot Mike Durant. Durant was captured and held hostage for 11 days before being released. Their actions became symbols of selfless heroism in modern warfare. The film pays tribute to them in several scenes of quiet reflection. Real soldiers who knew them were on set to ensure their bravery was honored accurately. Director Ridley Scott refused to exaggerate or dramatize their deaths for effect. Instead, he kept the tone brutally real, making it even more powerful. The dialogue spoken by Gordon and Shugart came from real radio transcripts. Every decision they made was authentic to the moment. Their courage under fire inspired millions when the story was revealed. The Medal of Honor was awarded to both posthumously, the first since Vietnam. Fact 5. Ridley Scott wanted Black Hawk Down to feel like a documentary rather than a traditional action film. The weapons used were real M4 carbines, M60 machine guns, and miniguns mounted on helicopters. Many scenes were filmed with live gunfire blanks that kicked up real debris. Scott used handheld cameras to create the feeling of chaos and disorientation. Each shot was coordinated with military advisors to match actual tactics used in Mogadishu. Even the radio chatter during firefights was recorded from authentic military communications. Helicopter pilots from the U.S. Army assisted with aerial sequences. They performed dangerous low-flying maneuvers that simulated real combat missions. No CGI helicopters were used. Every flight was real. The director also used over 1,000 practical explosions during filming. The sounds of ricochets and bullets were recorded on site for maximum realism. Actors often flinched for real when explosives detonated nearby. The film's sound design won an Oscar for its accuracy and intensity. Many veterans later said the movie felt too real to watch. It remains one of the most technically accurate war films ever made. Fact 6. Before filming began, the entire cast underwent an intensive boot camp run by real U.S. Army Rangers. It lasted 2 weeks and took place in the Moroccan desert. Actors slept in tents, marched long distances, and ate military rations. They were given no special treatment or privileges during training. Each morning began with drills, weapons training, and live-fire exercises. The instructors constantly shouted commands to simulate battlefield stress. Josh Hartnett later said he had never been so exhausted in his life. The training built both physical endurance and team trust among the actors. It also forced them to think like soldiers, not movie stars. The camp created genuine camaraderie that translated perfectly to screen. Even Ridley Scott attended some sessions to understand the pressure the men endured. Many actors said the toughest part was the mental exhaustion and lack of sleep. Real soldiers who participated were impressed with how dedicated the cast became. When filming began, the crew moved and spoke like a real military unit. The authenticity of the actors' teamwork became one of the film's greatest strengths. Fact 7.
Come on! Come on! Go!
The sound design in Black Hawk Down was built almost entirely from real battlefield recordings. The audio team used actual recordings of helicopter rotors, gunfire, and explosions from military archives. They blended those with live recordings captured during filming. Every weapon has its own unique sound signature, and the mixers refused to reuse generic effects. The M4 rifles, for example, sound sharper than the heavier M60s. The miniguns from the Black Hawks roar with terrifying intensity. Even the echoes of shots in narrow alleys were scientifically modeled. The team spent months layering the city's ambient noise with gunfire and screams. They wanted viewers to feel surrounded and trapped like the soldiers were. The helicopter's thundering rotors often drown out dialogue intentionally. This created the same confusion soldiers experienced under real combat stress. The soundtrack was mixed in Dolby Digital 5.1, an advanced system at the time. It placed the audience directly in the middle of the fight. Critics praised the film's soundscape as revolutionary. The movie went on to win the Academy Award for Best Sound. The realism remains unmatched 2 decades later. Fact 8.
I think they've forgotten us! What?
The iconic Black Hawk helicopters featured in the movie were real UH-60s provided by the U.S. military. Pilots were active-duty servicemen with years of combat experience. They performed real maneuvers at dangerously low altitudes during filming. Ridley Scott often directed from a helicopter himself to capture dynamic aerial shots. The pilots coordinated perfectly with the camera team to recreate the chaos of Mogadishu. Some scenes involved flying just meters above rooftops. One wrong move could have been fatal. The sound of blades slicing through air was recorded live for authenticity. Helicopters also kicked up real dust clouds, creating the signature brownout effect. The sequences where choppers crash were a mix of real footage and detailed models. Special effects teams built full-scale mock-ups to simulate wreckage on the ground. One pilot said filming Black Hawk Down felt closer to combat than a training mission. The coordination between ground and air crews was remarkable. Even minor flight paths were choreographed with military precision. The result was aerial footage that looked terrifyingly real. No CGI could have matched the intensity captured in camera. Fact 9.
You do yours! Forward!
When the film was released, many real veterans of the Battle of Mogadishu found it difficult to watch. Some attended private screenings arranged by the producers. Several broke down during key scenes, especially the helicopter crashes. The accuracy of the combat sequences brought back painful memories. Families of fallen soldiers praised the film for honoring their loved ones truthfully. Others found it almost too realistic and emotionally draining. The Pentagon supported the film but made sure the story stayed factual. Veterans who consulted on set said the film captured the confusion, the fear, and the brotherhood. Mike Durant, the pilot who was captured, publicly thanked the filmmakers. He said watching it felt like being there again. The movie reignited discussions about the U.S. role in Somalia. It reminded the public of the human cost behind military missions. Some soldiers said it helped civilians understand what they endured. For many, Black Hawk Down became a visual record of what words couldn't describe. The trauma it depicted was not fiction, it was history brought to life. Fact 10.
Get it up, sir! Out the calm down, goddammit! There's 5 orders now! Get out!
Director Ridley Scott approached Black Hawk Down with a painter's eye for chaos. He used handheld cameras and long lenses to capture the fluidity of battle. The film's signature dusty, washed-out color palette was intentional. It reflected the heat, confusion, and exhaustion of combat in Mogadishu. Scott preferred practical lighting from sunlight and flares instead of studio rigs. He relied heavily on multiple cameras running simultaneously to capture unpredictable action. The editing stitched together over 1.5 million feet of film. Each frame was carefully chosen to feel disorienting, yet authentic. The city's layout was mapped meticulously so viewers never felt lost. Scott used smoke and debris to simulate how visibility vanished in combat. The pacing mimicked real-time. You feel trapped with the soldiers. Critics praised his ability to make chaos understandable. Despite dozens of characters, the story never loses emotional focus. Every shot drips with tension, dirt, and sweat. Ridley Scott transformed a modern battle into an immersive, cinematic experience. Fact 11.
I'm a pilot.
Every weapon, vest, and uniform in Black Hawk Down was modeled after real 1993 U.S. Army equipment. The costume department worked directly with the Department of Defense for authenticity. Soldiers wore genuine Kevlar helmets, tactical vests, and desert boots. The firearms were real military rifles modified to fire blanks. Even the scratches, sweat stains, and dust were added based on real photos from Mogadishu. Each actor carried the correct loadout for his role. Rangers used M4 carbines, while Delta Force used CAR-15 rifles. Prop masters made sure magazines were weighted to feel like loaded weapons. The actors learned to reload under pressure exactly as soldiers would. Even the patches and call signs were historically correct. Ridley Scott wanted every detail to hold up under scrutiny from real veterans. The crew also replicated the Black Hawk interiors to scale. The film's art team studied hundreds of photos from the mission for reference. No detail was too small. Even the duct tape on rifles was placed correctly. Many of the props were donated to military museums after filming. When the movie premiered, soldiers remarked that the gear looked straight off the battlefield. The authenticity gave Black Hawk Down its documentary-like realism. Fact 12. Although the movie looks chaotic, every gunfight was carefully choreographed. Ridley Scott created massive storyboards mapping each soldier's movement. The stunt team rehearsed each action sequence for weeks. Every explosion, bullet strike, and fall was calculated down to the second. The Moroccan extras learned how to move realistically as civilians caught in crossfire. The production used over 40 cameras simultaneously during major battles. Thousands of blanks were fired daily under strict safety supervision. The crew had to track every spent shell to avoid real ammo contamination. Scott insisted on capturing everything practically rather than relying on CGI. He used smoke and dust to create disorientation without losing realism. The sound department synced hundreds of individual gunshots for accuracy. Chaos had to look spontaneous, but it was actually military-level precision. The cast often got lost in the intensity, forgetting it was a film set. The stunt coordinators used real combat footage to plan every movement. Scott wanted viewers to feel the sensory overload of modern warfare. The result was one of the most realistic battle sequences ever filmed. Fact 13. Behind the explosions and heroism lies a tragic reality. The mission was a political and humanitarian disaster. The original goal was to capture two of ID's top advisors. But after the helicopters went down, everything changed. What began as a 30-minute operation turned into a full-scale urban war. Over 1,000 Somalis, including civilians, were killed or wounded. 18 Americans lost their lives and more than 70 were injured. The aftermath shocked the world and changed U.S. foreign policy in Africa. The images of soldiers' bodies being dragged through Mogadishu aired worldwide. It sparked national outrage and led to the withdrawal of American forces. For many soldiers, the trauma never faded. Survivors struggled with PTSD and survivor's guilt for years. Families of the fallen demanded answers about the mission's purpose. Black Hawk Down doesn't shy away from showing the human toll. It captures the confusion, the fear, and the impossible choices of combat. The film's realism forces viewers to confront the real price of intervention. It stands as both tribute and cautionary tale. Fact 14. The U.S. Department of Defense played a major role in helping the production. Ridley Scott was given unprecedented access to military equipment. The Pentagon provided helicopters, pilots, and training support. In return, they reviewed the script for accuracy and operational security. The filmmakers were not allowed to alter major facts of the battle. All depictions of U.S. forces had to remain realistic and respectful. The cooperation saved millions in production costs. Soldiers even volunteered their time to appear as extras during large battle scenes. Some of them had served in Somalia years earlier. The military also transported real Black Hawks and Humvees to Morocco. The Pentagon's goal was to ensure that Hollywood got it right for once. Ridley Scott praised their professionalism, but refused to make the film propaganda. He showed both heroism and mistakes equally. The Defense Department approved the final cut without major changes. Their involvement gave the movie a level of authenticity few films achieve. It became a textbook example of Hollywood military collaboration done right. Fact 15. Black Hawk Down featured one of the largest ensembles in modern cinema. Many of its actors were unknown at the time, but later became Hollywood stars. Josh Hartnett, Ewan McGregor, Orlando Bloom, Tom Hardy, and Eric Bana all appeared. Hardy made his film debut here, playing a young private. Bana's role as Hoot Gibson earned him major recognition and launched his U.S. career. Ewan McGregor's character was inspired by a real soldier who later opened a coffee shop. Every actor had to memorize real military protocols before filming. They spent hours studying maps and mission reports to understand their characters. The cast's chemistry came from shared exhaustion during boot camp. Ridley Scott encouraged improvisation to make dialogue sound natural. Some emotional moments were unscripted reactions to explosions. Despite the huge cast, each actor brought individuality to his role. The film balanced chaos and humanity in every face shown. Many cast members later said, Black Hawk Down changed their understanding of war forever. The project became a rite of passage for a new generation of actors. Fact 16. The haunting score of Black Hawk Down was composed by Hans Zimmer. He blended electronic beats with traditional African instruments. The result was a sound that felt both modern and primal. Zimmer wanted the music to represent the pulse of chaos and confusion. Instead of heroic themes, he focused on tension and dread. Percussion and distorted vocals built an atmosphere of constant anxiety. The soundtrack avoided patriotic overtones to maintain realism. Ridley Scott gave Zimmer full creative freedom to experiment. Some tracks were created using real battlefield sounds mixed with drums. The famous cue still mirrors the emotional weight of the soldiers' exhaustion. Critics praised the music for enhancing the film's raw emotion. It won the BAFTA Award for Best Film Music in 2002. Zimmer said he wanted the audience to feel trapped, not triumphant. The score perfectly complements the film's visual intensity. Even without dialogue, the music alone conveys the chaos of war. It remains one of Zimmer's most haunting works. Fact 17. Ridley Scott insisted on sticking to the real timeline of the battle. The script followed Mark Bowden's best-selling book, Almost Scene by Scene. Every name, radio call, and mission objective was verified by veterans. The filmmakers even consulted the official after-action reports from the Pentagon. They reconstructed the city layout to match the satellite imagery from 1993. Soldiers' movements were mapped with military precision. The film shows the actual time it took for rescue convoys to arrive. Even small details like call signs and injuries were cross-checked. Real soldiers visited the set to share first-hand stories. Some corrected lines of dialogue to reflect how things truly sounded under fire. The production avoided glorifying violence or simplifying the mission. Instead, it focused on the confusion and humanity of those involved. Historical consultants praised the movie for being one of the most accurate war depictions ever. Many schools and military academies still use the film for tactical analysis. Black Hawk Down became more than entertainment. It became historical documentation. Fact 18. After the real battle, public outrage in the U.S. led to major political consequences. The deaths of American soldiers changed how Washington viewed peacekeeping missions. President Bill Clinton soon withdrew U.S. forces from Somalia entirely. The tragedy also made the U.S. hesitant to intervene in future African conflicts. Critics blame poor planning and underestimating the enemy's strength. Military analysts later said the mission's failure shaped U.S. foreign policy for decades. The images from Mogadishu haunted American leadership. Some soldiers felt their sacrifices were used for political gain. Others hoped the film would restore respect for what they endured. Ridley Scott intentionally avoided political commentary in the movie. He focused instead on the human experience of combat. Still, the release reignited debate about intervention and risk. For many Americans, Black Hawk Down reopened wounds long suppressed. It also reminded viewers that real war has no clean victories. The political shockwaves of that one day still echo through modern military policy. Fact 19. Black Hawk Down was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and won 2. It took home Oscars for Best Film Editing and Best Sound. The film also received BAFTA nominations for direction and cinematography. Critics praised its technical excellence and visceral storytelling. Many called it one of the most realistic war films ever made. Roger Ebert described it as a masterclass in controlled chaos. Despite the praise, some criticized its emotional distance and lack of Somali perspective. Still, veterans and historians largely applauded its authenticity. The movie's influence spread beyond cinema into military training programs. The U.S. Army used clips for leadership and crisis response lessons. Film schools now study its editing as an example of immersive pacing. Black Hawk Down remains Ridley Scott's most realistic depiction of modern warfare. The film's raw intensity set a new standard for war movies. It continues to appear on greatest war film lists worldwide. 2 decades later, it's still regarded as a technical and emotional triumph. Fact 20. The men who fought in Mogadishu became legends within the military community. Many continued to serve in later conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Others retired and became advocates for veterans' mental health. The memory of the fallen remains sacred among their comrades. Every year, reunions are held to honor the soldiers of Task Force Ranger. The phrase, "Leave no man behind," became a defining symbol of their mission. Black Hawk Down helped ensure their story would never be forgotten. The film's closing text lists the names of all 18 Americans who died. Families of those men attended early screenings and found closure. Some said the movie finally showed the world what their loved ones went through. For young soldiers today, it stands as a reminder of courage under impossible odds. The legacy of Mogadishu is one of sacrifice, brotherhood, and endurance. Ridley Scott's film immortalized their story for future generations. What began as a disaster became a story of resilience and heroism. Even decades later, the bravery of those men continues to inspire. Their names live on, not just in history, but in the hearts of all who serve.